Let's imagine, like, the Muslim population in this country is expanding all the time. They've got Muslim-run cities now. They have call to prayer in certain cities in this country. Imagine that goes everywhere. They're in control of social media, and they institute Sharia law on social media, and they want to throw gay people off the roof. Yeah. This is where it goes. Like, you got to leave people the alone.
That's pretty alarming, isn't it? For many Americans, this isn't theoretical. We've seen what radical Islamist movements have done abroad, the propaganda, the intimidation, and how quickly tolerance can turn into you comply. Then we're told, don't worry, stop talking about it, or the classic, if you're concerned, you must be Islamophobic. So how should Christians stand up to this? Well, Christians don't get to outsource our thinking to slogans. As Scripture reminds us to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. In other words, we must think, discern, and understand before reacting. Christians should be the most thoughtful and informed voices in the public square, neither naive nor paranoid, but grounded in truth. Our approach must distinguish clearly between genuine concerns and unfounded doubts when addressing fears. Protecting a free society demands truth, and we cannot honor Christ while attacking our neighbors. We also cannot honor Christ by turning a blind eye to something that is actually dangerous. The Apostle Paul instructed believers, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. That's what truth-telling is. It's not fear-mongering. It's faithfulness. Exposing what is false honors God, protects others, and preserves freedom. When you speak up, when you tell the truth, there's a real threat to that. I'm not talking about Muslims as people. I'm talking about radical Islamist ideology, often called Islamism. The movements that promote, recruit for, and use fear or political pressure to advance it. That's not a rumor, it's a fact. West Point's Combating Terrorism Center and other analysts have done remarkable work detailing these networks and how they operate, particularly online, even within Western countries. But we must keep one thing straight. Being Muslim does not make someone a terrorist, period. Demonizing all Muslims results in harsh judgment, and it fuels extremist strategy to recruit more Muslims who feel attacked. Islam is a religion. Muslims are people, and many are hardworking neighbors who came here for the same reasons your family did: opportunity, safety, and freedom. Islamicism is an ideology that seeks to organize society around Islamic law and the subordination of religion to the state. There is, however, a political spectrum that we have to consider, from those seeking greater cultural influence to those who use violence as a justifiable political tool. It is naive to deny that such a spectrum exists, but it is unjust to suggest that every Muslim fits it. When someone hurls Islamophobia to shut you down, let's not get defensive. Say something like this: I support religious freedom for Muslims because I support religious freedom for everyone, but I oppose any movement of any faith that seeks to replace the Constitution with religious law or to use intimidation to control society. That's not hate. It's common sense. Now let's take a closer look at how Islamicists are taking control of local city councils, school boards, and community organizations which stand on the front lines of cultural change. In places like Michigan, Muslim-majority councils and leadership are emerging. Take Hamtramck as an example. A Muslim mayor and an all-Muslim city council. It does seem legal, right? Seems democratic. It seems legitimate. But when a governing body becomes ideologically uniform around a religious worldview, the risk of Islamicism shaping policy rises. We've seen signs, policies that limit dissenting voices, especially those challenging Islamic values, have been marginalized. That's not pluralism. It's religious governance in local politics.
The agenda that the activist Muslim is pushing is anti-Christian, it is anti-American, it is anti-Republican, and it is anti-church, of course.
Christians, above all, should recognize that danger, because history shows what happens when religious authority and political power fuse and dissent is no longer tolerated. Tensions have already appeared in cities like Dearborn. These aren't just rumors. These have been public confrontations and political fights that are growing by the number.
A contentious battle is brewing in Dearborn over a mosque using outdoor loudspeakers for their call to prayer.
In early 2025, Dearborn's mayor, Abdullah Hamoud, told a Christian speaker at a public meeting that he was not welcome in the city.
Because you are a bigot, and you are a racist, and you are an Islamophobe. And although you live here, I want you to know as mayor, you are not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city, will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city.
Whether one agrees with his motives or not, the larger point is simple. No public official in America should tell a citizen they're not welcome because of their faith or their beliefs. That's not how constitutional freedom works. Consider the national landscape. Ilhan Omar has been condemned for statements many, including some in her own party, deemed anti-Semitic. We also have Rashida Tlaib, who has championed causes that are antithetical to American values. And now in New York City, they've elected their first Muslim mayor in Zohran Mamdani, who is a known democratic socialist. The rise of political figures with Islamic perspectives demonstrates that ideology itself holds power and influence. When religious or political movements secure control of government, they set policies and define cultural norms. This is the main issue. When public officials import Islamic ideology into the public square, excuse anti-Semitism, or advance policies that erode the Constitution, Christians, Jews, and every American who cares about liberty should take note. A person can be respected while the ideology is rejected. What's at stake is our Constitution. Article 6 makes clear that this document is the supreme law of the land. No religious system or political movement has the right to replace it, not even Islamicism, not secular socialism, not anything. Thomas Jefferson understood this. In the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, he wrote, "Our civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions." That captures why America has remained free. Our rights come from God, not government, and no religion should use government to coerce conscience. Jefferson affirmed liberty for the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Mohammedan. Religious liberty covers everyone, but no religion gets to rule. What does this mean for Christians? We can be vigilant and compassionate. We can defend freedoms without demonizing people. We can stand for truth without losing our testimony. We must stop swinging between denial and hysteria. Denial says nothing's happening. Hysteria says we're doomed. Both are wrong. Practice wise realism. Be alert, be informed, and know who's shaping policy in your city, in your schools, in your state. Get involved instead of just complaining online. And above all, remember why we're here. Muslims aren't a political problem. They're people that are made in God's image. Many are searching and are open to the truth. Their presence here is not primarily a threat. It's an opportunity. The early church didn't thrive because the culture was safe. It thrived because believers had conviction, courage, and compassion. They spoke truth, reasoned in public, and loved those who didn't love them back. That's exactly what we need now. My encouragement is to know the Constitution and to defend it. Stand against Islamicism as a political force, but don't let fear run the show or comfort keep you quiet. Know what you believe as a Christian. Defend the gospel. Share the gospel. When engaging your Muslim neighbors, do so with respect and truth. Don't retreat into fear. Don't settle for ignorance. Be the kind of Christian who's informed, grounded, and unshakable, not paranoid, but convinced in your love and faith in Jesus Christ. Remember what the words of Scripture teaches us, that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. That's the mindset of a believer who faces the world with courage, with compassion, and with great conviction. The gospel isn't a backup plan. It's the plan. That's how the early church changed the world. That's how we will too.